Hello, good day. My name is Malaika Maitland, and I am excited to be sharing with you from the beautiful Caribbean island of Grenada. I am a professional yoga therapist here and a birth worker, and it has been really an amazing journey for me. My birth work journey began when I first opened my yoga studio here alongside my parents, who are also yoga teachers, in 2011. One of the people who got recommended to us most often was pregnant people. And so um, I started prenatal offerings very early on in our studio. And what I came to realize was that there were not many services at all serving pregnant people and their families, besides their regular checkups, either at the community clinics or with OBGYNs or, their regular ultrasounds. These women, these families were not given any other resources, did not have any face-to-face opportunities to learn about what their body's going through, to troubleshoot, to compare evidence-based information with what they were seeing on the internet or hearing anecdotally. And so a few years into my teaching, I actually, at the same time, I traveled to the States to begin both my birth work training as a full spectrum doula and my professional yoga therapy training. Both of those paths for me have been real avenues for deepening my ability to support people in terms of their unique needs. And so that's how I really began birth work here. There are now a few more doulas who are practicing in Grenada, but it's still, very few. And of course, we've been disconnected from our traditional intergenerational knowledge and support because birth has been moving more and more, into the hospital primarily. And so, that kind of leads me right into the landscape of birth in Grenada. The Caribbean, each island is a different nation. It's different. We have many languages here in the Caribbean, many different sizes of countries. So Trinidad and Tobago, which is just south of where I am in Grenada, they have over 1 million people populating their two main islands, and so they have a midwifery association. They have Mama Toto, which is a birth center and resource center. There's a lot more resources there, comparatively to smaller nations like Grenada, and Carriacou and Petit Martinique, which are a part of our island, tri-island state. And also St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the nation just north of us, and they also have around the same population as Grenada, like just upward of 100,000. So our smaller countries definitely have unique struggles in the region, and I think a big one of the bigger struggles is space. In the case of, I'll speak for the Grenada General Hospital. We have one maternity ward where you have the beds that are there are split between people who are under observation in their pregnancy, people who have just given birth, and people who are going into active labor, pre-labor, who they've come down and they're staying as their labor picks up. And then you have your examination room, which is a fairly small room with 3 beds that have curtains around them for really mainly exams during active labor. And then you have the delivery room where, babies are delivered. But there is not really, even though the labor room, it really is an examination room. There's no space there to labor, and they generally don't allow any birth partner in there whatsoever. Birth partners are allowed to be involved in the process at the pushing phase. And as we know, at this conference, most of us know or have experienced that most births, pushing is really a small percentage of the whole labor. So during those periods where women are in active labor but they're not pushing, they're either in the labor room, or they are in the hallway, kind of in the middle space between these different sections, or in the main hallway of the hospital in front of the elevator bay, right next to the main staircase. So there isn't a lot of privacy. And so the big challenge is space, because births have been moved out of homes, out of community centers, and are now all being centralized at the general hospital. And so we're lacking space. And there are definitely midwives on staff, nurses on staff, and people in the administration who want to see a change, who know the evidence around women having space to labor, privacy, having their support with them. But as it stands, I think the big issue is centralizing birth and space. There has definitely been more of a desire to have home births by some people now. And we in Grenada currently have one main midwife who does home births. And this is the midwife who delivered my youngest siblings. She delivered my 2-year-old son. And she used to have a birthing center here, but then left, worked with Doctors Without Borders, training midwives, working as a midwife for many, many years, and returned only just recently. So, our options are very limited. And I think a big challenge as well is that we have a private hospital. Obviously, cost can be a factor for some in relation to that, but also at the private hospital, your options of between 2 doctors, 2 OBs who deliver there. So limited options in terms of who feels right for you, what their practices are. And I find that both doctors tend to lean into certain techniques. So one tends to do a lot of episiotomies and the other tends to induce women. So, you're dealing with a limited options and people's preferences as doctors. I think there's a lot of room for growth, but I do know that the people that I'm coming across, the clients that I'm coming across, are much more informed and seeking pathways of shoring up their voices, getting clear about their desires for their birth. I think the next steps forward for the region and for Grenada in particular really should include some research, some real qualitative research, a sense of what women and families, birthing people, are seeking from their birthing environments. What would they like to see in the hospitals? Do they prefer the current status quo that I hear about in the region, which is that you are not really allowed to have a birthing partner with you, whether it's your husband or a doula, because of space, because of privacy of other laboring people? Or would they really actually prefer to have everyone have access to a birthing partner and have less quote unquote privacy? And also questions around, whether women would like more non-hospital birthing options, and what they need in terms of education. I would love to collaborate with other regional practitioners who are interested in researching and getting, the collective voice of birthing people, because we can only assume based on our clients, in my case, and what I've experienced. But I also would love to see, what people have to say and what they would like. To feel more safe, more heard, and to have births that align with what their values are. And so the final question that I'll answer is, how has COVID-19 changed my work, significantly impacted my work? It's definitely changed my work in the sense that a lot more is virtual. Even here in Grenada, where we have had very few cases of COVID-19 overall. We've had pretty strict quarantines for people entering the country, etc. So even here, a lot has gotten virtual. For me, that's been a benefit being a parent of a young child. It's given my husband and I flexibility that I can have my yoga therapy clients virtually more, and also even in terms of birth work, being able to support virtually. And for me, that actually works beautifully, because a big part of my approach as a doula is really giving people the tools before labor. Because even if I'm showing up to be the quote unquote coach, if we don't have an opportunity to share tactics and practice ahead of time, it doesn't make sense. So this actually allows me to do more prenatal support, give people the opportunity to have some tools in their toolbox, so they are going in feeling like they can rely on themselves and their birth partner whether or not I'm there virtually through their birth. It's allowed me, a really special thing is that it has allowed me to virtually support international women, and I think across the board most of the women who hire me internationally are actually people from the Caribbean diaspora, and it's so amazing that I can offer these women a connection to home, but also my own experience as a global Grenadian, as a transnational Grenadian who's, lived in the States, moved home. I think it's really special that I can occupy that familiar space for these women, and I've loved that aspect of it. So for me, it's opened up this whole new market beyond Grenada that I could provide support to, and I think that is really fantastic. On the flip side, it's also made it so that institutions can really enforce this idea of only having, limited support or just one person in the building for you, etc. And that's really challenging. And I think there needs to be more pushback around laboring alone, COVID or not. So with that, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to Q&A and just this conference as a whole. I'm very grateful to be involved. Thanks.